Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to another 80s throwback for a film I wanted to revisit for a while, as this time of year it always comes to mind, as today, July 3rd, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time is when this horrible night began at Unita Medical Supply. This is when the frightening but undeniably fun Living Dead returned in The Return of the Living Dead from 1985. Directed by and screenplay by Dan O'Bannon, who also worked on the likes of Alien, Life Force, Invaders from Mars, and Total Recall, and based very loosely, from what I read, off of a book by John Russo with George Romero involved as well. This film stars Clu Gulager, James Karen, and Tom Matthews, among others, and of course, with the memorable Linnea Quigley as the character Trash. And the synopsis of this one is as follows. When two bumbling employees at a medical supply warehouse accidentally release a deadly gas into the air, the vapors cause the dead to rise again as zombies. Now, my thought in this one is that it is a great introduction to zombies and zombie films in general for a few reasons. First, it really is a very vibrant and fun film. It launches you right into the story and quickly sets you up with the characters and why they're in this situation. Every one of those characters also being very distinct as well. So it's easy to kind of take in who everybody is, why they're there, and jump into this journey. Second, it has a lot of zombie tropes which came before, and some which it has actually set up itself, such as not just chomping down on human flesh like in Night of the Living Dead, but brains specifically. It also expands on zombies in that, in the case of this film, a headshot won't necessarily take them out because the body parts are still going to be animated. Now, third for this one is that it has some great gore. Now, not as intentionally gross in a realistic way like some more current films that we see, but still some rough stuff for some newcomers to kind of get used to. But not so rough to turn them off completely, I would say. It's not peak gore, but enough to perhaps test them a little bit. So basically, if they can, if you're introducing somebody to this and they're able to find some of it gross, if they can get through it, it'll be rare in my case that I would actually be wanting to suggest something more gory. Enough to be true gory horror, but not like Terrifier 2 level gore. A nice mid-range one. At least, that's just my opinion. Maybe it's just because it's in comparison to some stuff that I've seen in recent years. And fourth and final, probably the most important to me, is the humor. Now, while this one is definitely a horror film, I mean, we got zombies killing people, eating their brains, turning others into zombies, and so on, a lot of violent, gross stuff in there. There is a lot of comedy thrown into this one as well, which definitely puts it more along the lines of horror comedy. From outlandish characters, both in those living as well as those that are kind of like in states of decay for our emerging zombies, to these little moments such as even the first zombie running around when it gets loose, or this scene showing this infamous split dog. So much of this film in general is just simply very outlandish and silly. But to go a little bit more into the actual story as far as what it's about, we have this medical supply place taking on a new employee. The seasoned older employee is showing this kid around and kind of showing off all the cool stuff that they have there. There's skeletons, split dogs, all sorts of weird things. And even speaking about how the movie The Night of the Living Dead, in this case, was claimed to be a true story. And that they even have these barrels which the military never recovered, which has one of these bodies inside. So of course he wants to show off these barrels. It breaches, sprays this fog out, which makes him very sick and knocks him out for a bit. The body's inside of it starts to kind of decompose pretty quickly for our opening shot, and that smoke or that fog not just made that creepy split dog display that we saw earlier come to life, and kind of a funny scene in itself, but the medical cadavers come to life as well. This one that they had, you even see little butterflies on the wall that are actually coming back to life also. But while they do eventually are able to take out this zombie, all of the parts are still alive, flopping around, trying to grab a hold of them and such. So they enlist the help next door of this crematorium to help them just simply burn it all up as much as they can. But that smoke now going up into the sky and then into these storm clouds where it starts raining down into the cemetery next door causes the dead from that cemetery to come back to life, crawling their way out of the ground, making the situation even worse than just the single corpse that they had to deal with initially. Compounded on this is that this kid has some friends who are wanting to hang out with him after work, so they decide to come up and meet with him there when he gets off. Some real 80s stereotypes here. You know, we got these friends consisting of like a mix of punk rock and some more almost yuppie types in there, which include the punk rock and strangely turned on by death character Trash, played by Linnea Quigley. Making no sense at all, she is very sexually turned on by the idea of death and being killed, and starts randomly stripping and dancing on a headstone as this group of friends are waiting for this kid to get off work next door in this cemetery. This scene in particular is actually how how one friend of mine kind of titles this film. He always forgets the name, and like he and his husband are really good, like really big horror fans, fellow horror fans. With him often making the comment like, "Oh, we should watch the one with the zombie one with the naked dancing girl," as I guess that's the most memorable part of the film to him, and probably is for me as well. But at any rate, another aspect of this rain coming down is that it's kind of like burning them in a way, you know, outside of the ability to raise the dead. So this group is going into a panic and trying to find a way to seek shelter from this. And from here on out, just all hell breaks loose. Everything is just going crazy with only brief moments of slowdown here and there to kind of regroup, give a little bit of exposition and keep us on track to let us know where we're going with the story. Now, one really great aspect of this that I always enjoyed was them working in them capturing one of these zombies and interrogating them. This way we get to know a little bit about why they're eating the brains, know that there's some sort of intelligence still there, though all consumed by pain of being dead. You know, another idea was that these two UNITA employees having become like infected or sick from the smoke rather than a bite. So they have these low body temps that are plummeting to room temperature. They have no pulse or heartbeat. Paramedics can't figure out what's wrong with them, and they're slowly turning into these zombies, but they're in extreme pain with that slowness coming in. You really get that sense that they are in complete agony as they are becoming what will later on be a big issue to deal with. I've always felt that this one's, this is kind of like a cool mix that they threw together, both in the story that they set, these new facets to the zombie films, as well as adding these, a lot of comedic aspects to the gory horror. The closest I could compare it to is like maybe 20 years later with Shaun of the Dead, but we don't really have any of those random bits of heart, such as between Shaun and his mother or his best friend, but a little bit more comedy thrown in. We get pure insanity smothered in a lot of cheese. I mean, we literally have talking zombies saying to send more cops or more paramedics in one case, to go along with the random dancing naked women and the bodies in various states of decay, and depending on what they were all buried in as well. We got a lot of crazy gags here and there, and the scares often include a lot of humor mid-horror scene to kind of keep it not too bad. But this is another title which was on really high cable rotation back in the day, which is why some, such as myself, are actually more familiar with this title than the sequel to it, or any of the other films such as Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, or even Day of the Dead. This was, in my experience, kind of like the Beastmaster of zombie films. It was always on somewhere, it seemed like, so this is the one that I'd seen the most. Now, as for my current viewing, this time it was on Blu-ray. I had previously only had access to like older copies of this, lower quality editions. But years back, after watching the documentaries VHS Massacre and VHS Massacre 2, which I did a video for and I will link to at the end, so be sure to stick around for that, it got me back into kind of collecting films a bit more, especially with so many titles frequently vanishing from streaming services, and not just services that I have, but just in general, sometimes you can't find them anywhere. I happened to be at a shop that was selling some used Blu-rays, and I saw The Return of the Living Dead, and I immediately scooped it up, headed home, and sat down to watch it. And though more artistic films are often touted as the ones to really pay attention to that visual quality, there are many other films that I feel can benefit, and The Return of the Living Dead is one of them. It's got this very wild color palette, kind of inspired by the times in which it was shot, from like the early to mid 80s, and taking place predominantly at night with rain pouring down. That Blu-ray edition really gives us a lot of bandwidth to work with. That higher bitrate and kind of less compression means that the colors really pop. Fast-moving portions of each shot, be they a zombie attack or simply rain coming down and a lot of splashing, they really come through clear, and there's none of those splotchy artifacts that I seem to see a lot in very dark scenes on streaming. Even if it's a stream that's supposed to be 4K, the compression is very different. Everything sticks out, jumps off the screen. So if you haven't seen this one in years, track it down on Blu-ray, because that clarity and all of this silly, gory, entry-level zombie fun, even with all this cheesiness, which is part of its charm, make this one more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out my latest video here for The Return of Living Dead from 1985, which at the time of this video is available on Tubi, Pluto, MGM+, Hoopla, a few other services, as well as paid rental. If it sounds interesting, check it out. And if you haven't seen it in years but remember enjoying it, I highly recommend snagging that Blu-ray. Anyways, that's all I've got for this one. Thanks for coming by and sticking around to the end. There's a link coming up in just a moment for a much older video of mine for VHS Massacre. It'll be popping up in just a moment, so be sure to click on that one when it pops up. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.